Pew, pew, pew.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode, the latest episode of Fandom Power. My name is Wes R. Scott, and as always, this week I'm riding shotgun with my man Andy.
Yo, we're down one though.
Sadly, we're flying the missing man formation this week, not because anything sinister has happened, other than,
well, who knows?
Darn internet.
Who's pulling the strings for that particular thing?
I should have asked him if he was on Rogers.
Maybe. That could explain a lot.
We are missing Hank tonight because of an internet issue, which is beyond his control and ours too. However, we wish him well. We know he'll be back soon.
Yep.
Hey, if you're joining us live tonight, thanks for being here with us. If you're catching us in the replay, thank you for choosing us as your entertainment option for the next little bit, hour and a half, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less, depending on how this goes. In our last episode, we had a lot of fun. We got a suggestion from our friend Rob Tebow, who said, hey guys, you gonna talk about some lightsabers?
So we did.
And we did. And
there was more to talk about than anyone knew.
Yeah, really. I had a really good time doing the lightsaber episode. I thought it was way more, first of all, I felt really a lot more casual to me anyway.
Yeah. But there was a lot more to learn.
There really is.
It's not
there really
just
was
one lightsaber to rule them all.
No, couldn't be that simple. Come on now.
No.
So we thought we'd keep that train rolling, and guess what, everybody? We're going to talk about pew pews. Talk about blasters in the Star Wars universe.
Specifically, though, just from New Hope.
Yeah, specifically A New Hope. Yeah,
because there's a galaxy full of them.
Well, unbeknownst to you guys, because you can't see my notes, which are kind of over here. I do have a short list of the other weapons from the other films, and it turns out that there are enough blaster or blaster-like weapons throughout the film franchise, just the original trilogy. We could do 3 shows easily on just that. So if you enjoy this episode, if you like us talking about Star Wars blasters, let us know, and we will develop
we'll turn it into a trilogy.
And why not? We've got some time on our hands before Andor the Bad Batch. So certainly more than happy to put that together and keep that one rolling. By the way, if you haven't checked out our Patreon, do go over there, the Fandom Power podcast on Patreon, where you can be a show producer, where you will have your name added to the credits, and you'll have access to all of our show notes as each new episode goes up. I thought we'd approach this one kind of like we did lightsabers. I thought, let's take a look maybe historically, kind of.
That's a good place to start.
Well, I mean, we've talked about the, Star Wars being a derivative, right?
Yes, and it does borrow heavily from other media.
Yeah, it really does. And so, I mean, if the lightsaber is just an iteration of the classic flaming sword, then the blaster really is just,
another version of the ray gun,
or firearms from our own history.
True.
And that's where we're going to start with our own little bit of human history here while we pop this over here. Look at this.
Vintage.
So what? I mean, we're going back, about 1,000 years here?
Roughly.
The first, or I guess the precursor to the modern firearm in our own history, it would be the Chinese fire lance, which was quite literally a bamboo tube lashed to a spear that they would basically shove in some black powder, early black powder, and it was used for shock and awe at the opening of a melee, as they would let these things off as they would close for the battle. That
shocking.
Well, you think?
Something new.
That evolved into the hand cannon. And of course, the image here, if you're watching live, the image on the screen right now, we have the oldest surviving example of a hand cannon. This thing is made of I don't know, it's cast, I guess, some kind of metal.
Could be bronze, maybe.
Man, I don't even know. But to think that, I mean, the hand, the fire lance going back to the 10th through to the 12th century, and then the hand cannon between the 13th and the 14th, That's a fair advancement in
That's a good jump.
in what, 1 to 200 years.
Yeah.
When you think that the modern firearm really hasn't,
It hasn't changed that much.
not a
100 years.
whole lot. No. By the way, full disclaimer here, I am not an expert in firearms by any means. So when we get down to the nitty gritty and we start talking about actual firearms, listen, if you're a gun guy or a gun girl,
A gun people.
if you're a gun person, please do not ream me in the comments because I say something wrong about the firearm.
Real world counterpart.
Yeah, exactly. Because really, we're not here to talk about real world guns, although that will come into the conversation because Star Wars is pretty unique in that sense, in that there's a lot of real world weapons that were adapted for the movies. And I think that's actually part of what makes that whole lived in universe look.
Yeah.
That Star Wars is known for.
Yeah. That you don't really catch on to, but it's there.
No, absolutely. And I think, knowing that that's where we're headed, let's take a look at some older science fiction firearms, particularly, I guess, as you say, the ray gun, because isn't that kind of what, science fiction kind of leaned into?
It leaned into it pretty heavy.
Earliest reference to a ray gun that I could find, 1898, goes back to H.G. Wells'
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. That is, by the way, the original artwork, the original cover. That is the 1896 War of the Worlds on the left.
Be worth some money now.
You would think.
I'd hope.
Although it's in the public domain now.
True.
It's public domain. So you ever bought a book that's public domain?
No.
I bought the collected volumes of all of the John Carter of Mars books. Cost me $15. Oh,
jeez.
In a hardcover, by the way. Yeah, it was super cheap. I loved it.
Even better.
So War of the Wells. Wow. War of the Worlds, the seminal H.G. Wells work, first published in 1898, considered widely to be the first literary description of a beam-like weapon, and it was referred to as a heat ray. The book got its first translation in 1900, and then it went without the illustrations. All the French translations, no illustrations. It wouldn't get illustrations again until 1906. Those are the images that you're seeing on the right-hand side of that slide. These are from Brazilian artist Henrique Alvim Correa. And this time, the Martians appear to be far more techy, I suppose.
A little bit more
fluid
tech. A bit more Doc Ock.
I mean, they were described as armored, what they call armored tripods or mechanical tripods, I think is what the book described them as. But even going back 1906, I mean, you can see it right there already. It's a little handheld beam weapon.
Yeah. It looks like one of those modern day air horns.
It does, almost like an old air raid siren. So yeah, there we go. We've got War of the Worlds 1896 and then again 1906. Let's fast forward a little bit here. I mean,
our first comment coming in too from a Facebook user.
First comment coming in from Facebook says, reminds me of Invid. Well, I know what an Invid is. Do you?
I honestly don't.
Well, the Invid were one of the protagonists in the 1985 animated series Robotech. They were the main villain for the third segment of the saga, which was referred to as the new generation.
Okay.
It does look like remind me of an Invid as well. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that if you're going to look at ray guns in the history of science fiction, it would not be what we would be remiss not to include.
There's a couple major names here.
Buck Rogers, his XZ or XZ38 disintegrator pistol from 1929. Buck Rogers flew into the 25th century back in 1929, but he wouldn't make the leap to the big screen till 10 years later in 39. And even then, his disintegrator pistol was basically a faithful representation of what we had seen in the magazines and the pulp.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Fun fact here, Larry Buster Crabbe, who played Buck Rogers, got a guest shot in the 1979 Buck Rogers opposite of Gil Gerard.
Nice.
Pretty cool. So he's like in his 70s when he did that.
That's like a OG Easter egg.
Big time. Yeah. This was the episode. Oh my gosh, I don't know the name of the episode. Buster Crab. He appeared as Brigadier Gordon, which actually is a little bit of a nod to another character that that Larry Buster Crab played, and of course that is Flash Gordon. Of course, he played Flash Gordon 3 times in 3 different serials between 1936 and 1940.
Huh.
Played
canon.
Well, I don't know.
Same guy come back. You could make a case for it.
The fact that he's both characters.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Also played Tarzan. Yeah. What's I going to say here? Oh, yeah. So Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe. That's the 1940. That's the last serial that they did. And we get to see really ray gun. I wouldn't say it's the first time we see a ray gun, but it's probably one of the more
little bit larger models. Definitely not like just a single handheld.
No,
it's almost like a sawed-off shotgun style.
I don't know about you, but I see a toilet plunger in there.
It kind of looked like that.
A toilet plunger with a block of wood. Come on, prop making in the 1940s was probably a little different than it is now.
Don't have to worry about color. It's all shot in black and white.
No 3D printers. Yeah, really. That's so true. All right, fast forward to another little piece of science fiction that we've talked about before. This one is a classic. That's 1953's Forbidden Planet. And in Forbidden Planet, we see the illuminating blaster pistol or the illuminating blaster rifle. Forbidden Planet, seminal movie. It's known for quite a few things. One, this was Leslie Nielsen, our very own Canadian. This was his first starring role. It's only his second appearance in film, by the way, too.
Nice.
This is also the first movie that shows humans traveling faster than the speed of light in a craft of their own design. This was the first appearance of Robbie the Robot, as you can see right there on the movie poster.
Yep. Facebook comment
coming in says it looks a lot like a drill. You know what?
The pistol does.
That's exactly. I was thinking drill and or. Do you remember those old soldering guns?
Yes.
Very much like that. But when to say that it looks like an old drill, I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what it was.
It might be, yeah. Saw off the cord.
Yeah. And this is an interesting one. This is the first first Hollywood movie to feature an all electronic score. Yeah. So this is as we're talking about ray guns and blasters throughout the ages, this is kind of the evolution here. We're at 1953. We're going to leave the 50s. We're heading straight into the 60s, and you can't talk about 1960s science fiction without bringing up this one. This is, of course, Star Trek, the unaired pilot episode, The Cage. And although this was shot in 1963, it was completed and submitted to CBS in 64. Rejected by the network, by the way.
Oh.
Which ordered another pilot right after that. But Star Trek fans, this is a huge departure from the classic Trek phaser that we all kind of recognize. Interestingly enough, what do we got here? We got another comment coming in. Says, I know every time I pick up a drill, it's temporarily a ray gun.
Yeah. You always got to fire a couple shots.
I was going to say, you pick it up and you to make sure it's still working, right? It's almost like the rule of barbecue tongs. You don't click them together, they don't work.
Yep. Got to test them.
That's funny. Interesting about this episode, The Cage, most of the footage from The Cage got recycled for a regular season 1 episode. That was the Menagerie, of course.
Okay.
Interesting.
It wasn't a waste.
Well, no. Interestingly, though, The Cage never got a public release until 1986, and then it was released on VHS.
Ooh.
It wouldn't get broadcast on television until 2 years later in 1988. So yeah, the 64, 65 thing. And then, one other big one for the 60s before we get back to something a little more familiar. I don't know about you. Were you a fan of Lost in Space?
I watched an episode or two.
Okay, I find this one to be like really interesting because we're toy guys.
Yeah.
And so, would you believe that the season 1 ray gun from Lost in Space was actually a toy ray gun from Remco?
Nice.
You can see that, and of course, in the example that we have here, it's branded as a Star Trek pistol.
Ooh.
Yeah. So two ray pistols in Lost in Space. The season 1 pistol again, the Remco toy.
Rebranded.
Yeah, and then
Repainted, I should say.
the season 3 pistol, which looks like a completely scratch built prop. Yeah.
A little bit further along in the evolution of it, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. And then we got to come back to, because then we come back to Star Trek, and of course, this is the classic, at least for my tastes, this would be
It is a
the
classic.
quintessential, the classic phaser. Of course, the phaser, the Type 1 and the Type 2. I should say the Type 1 phaser, that's the little handheld piece that fits into the more pistol-y looking thing. Facebook comment comes and says a glue gun.
True.
I guess it does kind of look like a glue gun,
It's
doesn't
like
it?
a cross between a glue gun and one of those little hammers you use to break open a window.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does look like that, doesn't it? All right, so the classic series Trek phaser, this was a scratch built prop, and it actually takes its cues from 5 different concept drawings by John Jeffries.
Nice.
So John and his brother Matt Jeffries, if you may be familiar with Matt Jeffries, they're both
Prop design.
Yeah, prop guys. They sat down with Roddenberry. Between the 3 of them, they came up with sort of the elements, and the phaser actually became a sort of a conglomeration of all 5 of those drawings.
Nice.
In an interview, he'd actually said that the Type 1 phaser was actually partly designed, the shape at least, on a Magnavox TV remote control, which I presume is this one. I mean, if you look up Magnavox TV remote controls for that year, this is undeniably the one that they're talking about, the Phantom. Can you imagine remote control TV in 1965?
Yeah.
Like, sit across the room, not like tethered to a wire remote control?
No.
I don't. Well,
get up and change the knob.
Or tap one of the kids on the back.
Yep,
Get up there and change the channel.
Get up there, Billy.
One of the common things, and I mean, I'm going to put this out there to the audience. So all of the properties we've talked about up till now present ray guns in a very specific way, and that is what we've come to see on Star Trek: the continuous long beam of energy.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of changed when we got to the 1970s, right? Because then we got, that little independent movie that came out. I want to know, going back to what we were saying before, can anybody out there think of another example of a film or a TV series pre-1977 where energy weapons were depicted as bolts of energy, like a actual pew pew?
None spring to mind.
Comment from Facebook saying that you were dead if it fell on you, meaning the TV, I'm assuming. Yeah, we had a big floor model TV too.
Yep.
Yeah, I couldn't move that thing. Let alone, it was never on a stand. It was literally
a ground piece of
floor model.
Yep.
When your television was also a piece of furniture.
Yes. Later, it would become a hollowed out fish tank.
1977 rolls in. George Lucas drops this little independent film, and it's interesting when you look at it through the lens of specifically what we're talking about today, that it really is an independent movie. When you dig into the nuts and bolts and how they put the sets together and the props and the costumes, and you realize that so much of it was just off the shelf. Man, it works. And I know that, I don't know, I don't work in film, so I mean, I don't know, but I mean, we have this understanding that prop makers have been doing this stuff on a budget for for time immemorial, right? But why up until now has it not looked as in universe, or how, like, because let's be realistic here, like everything we've looked at so far, like if I said looked really sci-fi-ish, you'd know what I mean, right? Like it just looks so otherworldly, futuristic, I guess. Out
of this world.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, we've talked about this before, the difference between Star Wars Legends and Star Wars canon. And that was a major talking point on the lightsaber episode, was that there are some like serious differences between
How they work.
how they worked, you know, from one iteration to another. Facebook comment says, I always heard Mr. Lucas said it was a space western. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that as well. You know, Star Trek was pitched as a space western too. They called it basically Wagon Train in Space. I don't know which was more successful at the western element. Arguably, they both have elements that are definitely recognizable.
True, but if you look at Star Wars with its blaster bolts, you
Oh,
are
yeah.
really
No, I
mimicking
agree.
that
Yeah.
firefight from an old West film.
I do think that Star Wars, especially new Star Wars, like
Yeah.
The Mandalorian,
Heavy,
really gets the
fluids.
Western vibes going. I think that Flash Gordon had a ray gun that fired bolts. Okay, I'm gonna have to look for that again. We're talking about the 30s and 40s Flash Gordon. You have to take a watch of those. All right, so with Star Wars coming along and blasters becoming another piece of this like fantastic tech, they haven't really changed a whole lot between Legends and canon. So this is that part where you where I laugh, just like last time in our last episode. We'll talk about the in-universe science a little bit here.
Totally makes sense.
If you put on your suspension of disbelief caps and you let yourself go to that galaxy far, far away, this is going to be your crash course in blaster tech, because they all kind of function on the same sort of basic principle. And that is that they run on gas and electricity or energy. They must have a power source and they must have gas. So essentially and you can see here on the diagram that I've prepared for everybody, it's so technical, can't you tell?
I like it.
You have a gas cylinder that is where you store your gas. You have a power cell or some other form of power source, and you have another device which is called an exciter. And so a small amount of compressed gas is fed into the component called the exciter, which agitates the gas molecules. At the same time, a small amount of electricity from a power cell or power pack is also fed into the exciter, and it superheats the agitated gas, resulting in a plasma or particle bolt. The bolt is then hurled down the barrel by magnetic induction. So there you go. There is your...
yeah, some real world stuff in there too, though.
Well, and that's kind of how we came up with the whole talking about Chewie's bowcaster.
Yeah.
As being a rail gun.
Basically.
Yeah. One thing about in Star Wars is that blaster bolts, a lot, again, colors.
Yeah.
So not as detailed as the lightsaber episode, but
no 300 crystals.
Well, suffice to say that the color of your blaster bolt is determined by the type and the quality of the gas that you are using. So kind of like, you're going to put gas in your car and you're either going to fill it up, you're going to go regular, you're going to go mid-grade or premium, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the better the gas, the better or the difference in your blaster color. So for the record, red blaster bolts, cheapest gas going.
There you go. It'll get the job done.
Yeah. So red is considered to be the cheapest. That being said, knowing that, you could literally change the gas that you were using in your blaster and you could render that weapon non-lethal. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. Comment coming in from Facebook that says, is there an ammo count? The short answer is yes. The more complicated answer is it depends on the weapon, and it depends on how it's being used, because there are some references that talk about this particular weapon, the DL44 or the Han Solo blaster, at one time was said to be able to fire an overcharged shot, which would use more power. Now, I don't know, how often are you replacing the power cell versus the gas cylinder?
Don't know.
Presumably you've got to change both of those at some point.
One or the other.
And I don't imagine they are consumed at the same rate. Maybe they are. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I remember my dad's old air pistol, and you would always be changing out the cartridge for those.
Yeah. Well, I put together a list of all of the blasters that are seen. Some of them are not Some of them are a little
blink and you miss it.
Well, yeah, I'm going to get to some specific examples about that. Some of them are not as easily to spot as others, and I'll tell you, there's a couple in here that I literally kind of went, I did not know that until today, and which is really weird because I consider myself to be a very big Star Wars fan, but even now, here we are in closer to 50 than I am to 40, and I'm still learning stuff about these movies. So I kind of put this together like we did in the lightsaber episode. Now, I might be off, but I believe that I have them arranged in earliest on-screen. Chronologically from the opening shot of the movie to the end, which weapons we see in what order.
Nice.
So follow me, guys and gals, as we oh wait, what are we saying here? Is heat buildup an issue? Well, it can be. It certainly can be, as I mean, some weapons can also be set to self-destruct. And there are the fins here on the outside of Han Solo's blaster are meant for cooling
purposes.
But yeah, presumably each weapon will have some form of cooling built into it. All right, here we go. You ready to get into this?
I am.
All right, the first weapon that we see in Star Wars. There's a glory shot of
splash page.
Yeah, these are all of the on-screen weapons that are in A New Hope.
Nice.
Now, the artwork might not be accurate, but that generally speaking, those are the weapons from that movie. Okay.
Definitely going more out than just a single type.
Yeah, exactly. Interestingly enough, though, when we get to the in-universe stuff about like who makes them, you're going to see one name come up a lot. And that is Blasttech, because here it is. This is the Blasttech DH17. This is the Rebel Trooper or the Fleet Trooper weapon that you see when the rebels on Princess Leia's blockade runner are basically waiting to be, the big firefight at the beginning. So this is made by a company, Blasttech. The DH-17 was widely used by the Rebel Alliance, especially aboard starships where close quarter fighting was likely to take place. This weapon was also carried by certain Imperial officers. Given the political turmoil of the period, it is likely that rebels had secured some, if not most, of their DH-17s from defeated Imperial enemies. This one is based on the British Sterling L23A3 9mm submachine gun, the Sterling submachine gun. And you clearly can see the lineage there.
See the outline there.
Yeah. This one, fun fact for our Canadian viewers, this one actually saw service in the Canadian Army from 1958 to 1987.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, the Sterling is not, this wasn't the only gun that Star Wars gun that was based on the Sterling sub, because you've got probably, if not the most recognizable, certainly the most prolific in terms of like numbers of them, and that is the Stormtrooper E11 blaster. The E11, this is another one. I mean, there's Blasttech again. I mean, you're going to see that more and more and more as we go on through the breakdown here. The E11 is a medium range rifle, and it was the standard issue for the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps. This is an evolution of the DC-15A blaster used by the clone army of the Grand Republic. And just like the DH-17, the E11 is also based on the Sterling submachine gun, but this one comes with the addition of an M38 Sherman tank gun sight.
They definitely kept more of the original.
There's more of the Sterling in there
piece
with the side mounted magazine.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever, this picture doesn't really do it justice, but if you ever see a Sterling submachine gun with a magazine on it, a big like coming out the side, you can definitely see it here. All right, so now that we've landed on Princess Leia's ship, we might as well take a look at the princess's weapon. And that, of course, is this is the DDC Defender Sporting Blaster, the Drerian Defense Conglomerate sporting blaster pistol. It is a low-powered pistol that was meant for civilian self-defense and small game hunting. This variant model carried by Princess Leia aboard the Tantive 4 was actually called Satine's Lament. which is a relatively new development in the canon. I guess that's actually coming out of the new Marvel comics that they've changed the name to Satine's Lament. Pardon me. This one's kind of neat. It's based on a small Russian target shooting pistol that was made in 1948. That's the Vostok Margolin. It's a 22 caliber pistol. The reason that they chose this one, I don't know if you were, I just learned this. They picked this gun because it would not look bulky in Carrie Fisher's hands. Because she's she was a petite lady back then. Fun fact here, Luke Skywalker is wearing this gun as his sidearm during the medal ceremony at the end of the movie. So if you
maybe he's been out shooting small animals.
Who knows? That, and then there was talk about it being a ceremonial weapon as well. So that could be why. Whether it's, I mean, prop wise, I'm sure it's the same gun, but we're probably meant to believe that it's just another one.
Another one off the rear.
In the armory, yeah, off the rack.
That's right.
All right. All right, the next few we're going to see pop up on Tatooine, and we'll take a look at this one first. This is the T21 Light Repeating Blaster. We didn't get to see this one fire in the movie. No. The T21 Light Repeating Blaster, also just called the T21 Heavy Blaster, was a long-range rapid-fire weapon carried by some Stormtrooper units. The weapon's major drawback is that it is limited to just 30 rounds, making it unsuitable for suppressive fire.
So there you go, ammo count.
Well, yeah, that's this one specifically. And the research component on this, like some of them actually mention that, most of them don't. Yeah. You want to get into that kind of thing. I always say this, like the role-playing games are a wealth of information. Then again, comes with the caveat that depending on what edition you're playing, that may or may not be the canon answer. That being said, no cannon is more important than your own head cannon, I suppose.
That's right.
The T21, this one is actually based on a World War I Lewis machine gun, except the drum magazine has been removed and there are some other added
embellishments,
dressings. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, there's no mistaking the silhouette of that thing.
Well, yeah. And I mean, like most of the guns in Star Wars, they all get that, they're all sprayed out black. Yep. Yeah. The Lewis gun, this was this one came out in 1911 and it stayed in service right up until the end of the Korean War in 1953.
That's a lifespan.
Part of the unique look for this gun is that large barrel shroud, which was designed to work as a heat sink. Fun fact on the T21, the T21 actually could be used for sustained fire if it was connected to an external power source. All right, sticking with what's going on here on Tatooine, and we see this one a lot, especially now. If you're an action figure collector, you've seen this one a gajillion times because it's issued with every Stormtrooper action figure ever. This is the DL19, or sorry, the DLT19. Another one from Blasttech. Hey, what do you know?
There you go.
This is the heavy blaster rifle used by the Galactic Empire. It was carried by heavy weapons stormtroopers. This one offered heavier firepower than the standard E11. And unlike the T21, this one was capable of sustained fire without the need for an external power source. Of course, the DLT is based on probably one of the most famous German machine guns of the era, the MG34, and that stayed in service with the German army from 1936 until 1942. Now, for Star Wars, they dressed this one up with the same, we took the lightsaber episode?
Yes.
The Graflex handle?
Yes.
Has those little T-rails on it?
Yep.
The same T-rails that they used on the Graflex were used on the E11.
Getting extra mileage out of them.
Were also used on the DLT-19.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. This weapon also came in a sniper configuration. Okay.
It'd be hard to sniper anybody through that helmet, though.
I always, you know what? Let's talk about that for a second. Because I always presumed that there was optics in the Stormtrooper helmets.
Yeah.
Kind of like the clones, right? And I always thought that any kind of optics that were built into their weapons, I kind of thought linked to their helmets.
That would actually make a lot of sense.
It totally does, because I mean, you've got, Ben who says, These are far too precise for certain people.
And we know how precise Crosshairs was.
Well, that's true, right?
Yeah.
I just assumed that the optics were connected to their helmets. And that's what, again, no cannon is more important than your own head cannon. All right, so this is the first one, the weird one that, hey, I was like today years old when I learned that this was a thing, because I don't remember even seeing this in the movie, but there is photographic evidence, so it is true.
Mm-hmm.
This is the RT97C. In fact, this one does not have a manufacturer listed. This one is another heavy blaster that saw use during the Galactic Civil War. The RT97C was fitted with advanced optics, making it far more accurate than its counterparts, the DL19 and the T21. It was popular amongst the sand troopers of Tatooine, as well as Imperial jump troopers. Now, the RT97C is clearly based on the German MG15. Now, the MG15 was used extensively by the German Luftwaffe, their air force, as a mounted machine gun between 1932 and 1941. Well, for Star Wars, this one was fitted with a British number 32 Mark I scope. That's the same scope that was used on the Lee Enfield rifle as a sniper scope. Yeah.
So those are those advanced optics.
Exactly. And so, fun fact here, the RT97, and again, I was today years old when I learned this, wasn't even recognized canonically. It didn't have a designation until 2008. Up until then, fans just referred to it as the MG15.
Huh.
Yeah.
Can't have that.
So that scope, was used as a sniper scope on the Lee Enfield rifle.
Neat.
Which is a nice segue, because speaking of Lee Enfield rifle,
hey, there you go.
I included this not exclusively or specifically a blaster. It is a highly recognizable weapon from Star Wars, and that is the Jawa Ion Blaster, or the ionization blaster. This one, I mean, it's undeniable. You can totally see where it comes from.
Yep.
The Jawa Ion Blaster is designed to emit ion particles up to a short range of just 12 meters. This would disrupt any droid, causing them to shut down, making salvage operations much safer for the Jawas. Not surprisingly, each Jawa Ion Blaster is a handcrafted weapon built from scrap and salvage. Now, the blaster we see here from A New Hope is based on a cut-down Lee Enfield No. 1 Mark III rifle, which, of course, was used by the British and other Commonwealth countries from 1907 right up to 1957.
Strange about that when they actually kept the wood grain.
Well, this is it. I mean, they just cut down the
black.
Yeah, and they kept the cup discharger on the end. For Star Wars, they basically took the No. 1 Mark I cup discharger, which is a grenade launcher, by the way, for rifle grenades. Stuck that on the end, connected a hose to it, hooked it up to a power pack on their belt, and you get an ion blaster.
Nice.
All right, fun fact here, anybody who's played any video game that this appears in, or in the role-playing games, although not lethal to an organic creature, the ion blaster could be used to stun. Yeah, could really make your day not nice.
Well, yeah, because once they stun you, they're going to strip your ship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are very few species that are native to Tatooine. So if we're going to talk about the Jawas, then we also gotta talk about the Tuscan Raiders. Now, I've put these two together. This is Luke's hunting rifle. Now, it does have a name. It's the 6.2 AUG-2 hunting rifle. But I've also lumped in the Tuscan cycler rifle because back in A New Hope, both of these props, they are like purpose-built props. They are not these are not gun rentals from the supply people like most of the other firearms. These are actually carved out of blocks of wood and had other embellishments kind of given to them. But let's just talk about Luke's rifle here for a second. The AUG-2, 6.2 AUG-2 hunting rifle. This is from another company. This is from Zerka Arms, and it is a low-cost slug-throwing rifle. So yes, gunpowder weapons that use actual bullets do exist in Star Wars.
There you go.
Yeah, the length of the weapon meant that it was very precise at long range, despite the lack of any fancy optics. On the other hand, you've got Tuscan cycler rifles that were handcrafted, much like the Jawa's Ion Blaster. All these were constructed from salvage. Many of them had an effective range up to 1,000 meters. That's pretty darn good. And a lot of them were single bolt action rifles. Yeah. Both Luke's rifle and the cycler that we saw in A New Hope when they were shooting at Luke in the Landspeeder, or about to shoot Luke in the Landspeeder. These were hand-carved blocks of wood that had other embellishments added to them. Now, this is the reason why I put them together, is because both of these rifles, and by the way, when you realize this, I had this kind of epiphany that maybe this was also sort of some of the influence on the Sand People themselves back then, because both of these are based on the a rifled musket, the Afghan Jazile. Yeah. The Jazile, it could be either a matchlock or a flintlock, and they were used by Pashtun fighters during the first Anglo-Afghan War from 1838 to 1842, and the Afghans really drove it to the British. Yeah, so
maybe it's properly suited for the terrain.
I guess so. I mean, the real world history here is that yes, it's a musket, so it's muzzle loaded, but it's rifled. So unlike most muskets of the day, that's how they were able to outrange the British. That, and they would also make sure that they were up on the highest sort of
the high ground.
Yeah, and shoot down, right? So you could get more out of it. What's cool here is, and we see this in Star Wars, is that these rifles, particularly the Tuscans, they're highly ornate and highly personal, which the Jaziles were as well, because, these Afghan tribesmen didn't have much. They might have their gun. And so they would take it to these guys, these gunsmiths, who would really go to town on the intricate carvings.
Nice.
Yeah.
Make it a showpiece as well as a functional thing.
Well, this is it. I mean, and this is where I kind of go, is this, because I mean, you can go online and you can see, just go online and look up Afghan jingle truck and just see what they do with cars and trucks and these embellishments and stuff. It totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Were the Sand People patterned after Afghan tribes people?
It could be, based on what we saw in the Book of Boba Fett, because building your own gaffy stick, that was a task and a half, and it was
absolutely, it was
ornate, intricate, and very personal.
Yeah.
So why would it not reflect that?
Man, I don't know, but I kind of, as I'm doing the research on this and putting it together, I'm like, I wonder if that's really the case. If some of the
more real world influence,
the heavy robes, staying covered in the heat, and the whole tribal aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, remember the classic depiction of Tuscans were, savages. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
only recently have we got to dive in and actually learn more about their culture and whatnot.
Fun fact here, Luke's, on the original Marvel Comics run back in the 70s, they actually referred to this Luke's rifle as a laser rifle. But it's, no, it is in fact, a slug thrower. All right. These next couple weapons that we're going to talk about, they kind of go together, but in a very weird, it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on here for these next ones. So bear with me as we get to this, but the next one we're going to take a look at, this one, the DL21. Now, remember Ponda Baba and Walrus Man, for all you action figure guys out there, or these guys turned up, by the way, in Rogue One as well. This is one of those ones that you don't actually see in the movie.
No,
but I've included it because there are behind the scenes photos where you can see the gun on his hip in a holster and laying on the floor
after the fact.
Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit, but let's talk about the DL21 specifically for a second here. We're going back. There's another one from Blasttech. This is the DL21. It is a standard blaster pistol design that uses a flared muzzle to create a scattered energy charge effect like a modern shotgun. That would have been a much different.
Yeah, that would tear more holes and stuff.
Now, as I said, even though we don't see it, Ponda Baba did carry a modified DL21, but because of the way that the movie was shot, you don't really see it all that well. You can, though. I went back and I watched that sequence in the cantina, and you do see some of the details that if you aren't looking for them, you could easily miss them.
Yeah.
All right. So, speaking of Ponda Baba, do you remember which arm got cut off?
I would think the right arm.
We're going to take a look at that. I'm going to show you. All right. The DL21 is actually a cut down Armalite AR-7 Explorer. That was a 22 caliber takedown rifle that was marketed as a survival gun for campers and for backpackers because of its compact size. In fact, when you broke the gun down, the receiver, the magazine, and the barrel all stored inside the buttstock, and you could just like strap it to your backpack. Yeah, so it's very small.
Not exactly quick on the draw, though.
No, exactly. So yeah, we're gonna come back to that arm thing because that's a bit of a sticking point, right? Because
it's a classic scene.
Well,
and it set the pace for everybody having to lose a limb and everyone.
I mean, Ponda Baba got his arm cut off, but let's remember, it wasn't Ponda Baba that drew down on Luke and Ben. It was Dr. Evazan. And Dr. Evazan, he used this weapon. This is the SE14C. This is another one from our good old friends back at Blasttech. The SE14C was a large blaster pistol that was fitted with dual scopes. Kind of looks a lot like the same dual scopes we see on Chewbacca's bowcaster.
I wonder what the purpose of dual scopes would be.
Yeah.
Maybe like a near and a far?
Well, so this gun actually bridges the gap between pistol and repeating blaster. So maybe one is for like pew pew and another one is for pew 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 pew.
Because I don't recall him having eyes that close together.
Well, not really. All right, the SE14C was ideal as a close quarter weapon where its low recoil and automatic fire mode made it aptly suitable. Now, although it's not shown in the film, there's a couple wider shots that show that this is the gun. And you can see it on the floor laying next to Ponda Baba's arm, despite the fact that he's actually carrying the DL21.
Weird.
Yeah. All right. So, and that's another thing too, is that we're going to look at that again too. Ponda Baba originally came with like flipper hands. And in fact, the action figure toy, they sold them with the flipper hands. Which is kind of neat when you realize, kind of stupid, or well, I guess you decide how you feel about it. But I mean, when you look at the hand, the severed arm, it's got the Harry Wolfman hand on it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. All right. So for Star Wars, this is the SE14C was actually based on a Swiss-made 9mm called the Wrexham Favor. It was a submachine gun. Looks a whole lot like the oh my God, there's a German. I can't think of it. The German submachine gun, World War II. Wow.
Ruger?
Again, I am not a historian, so.
Me neither.
However, this gun was developed in 1953, and because it was heavy and clumsy, and the firing mechanism was considered too complicated, there was very little interest from any of the NATO countries on buying it. In fact, only Turkey ended up buying it.
Wonder if they got a discount.
I don't know if they did or not.
Well, if nobody else is buying it, you got to lower the price.
Maybe.
But yeah, they retained a lot of the actual thing.
Well, for this one, for Star Wars, literally they just removed the barrel, the magazine, and the buttstock.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then slap those
scopes.
Dual scopes, and away you go.
Well, yeah. So, fun fact here, the Wrexham Favor, that machine gun was reused 2 years later for Alien.
Nice.
Ridley Scott's Alien. Remember our good friend Roger Christian, who was also the guy who made our lightsaber?
Yeah.
He also made the gun for both Star Wars and for Alien. So, I mean, having already worked on that weapon, it was a natural choice.
Easy
for him
to go back
to.
to.
Yeah. All right, let's pull the veil back on some of this behind the scenes stuff, because this is where you kind of get the fun bits out of it. Here's a shot. This is Ponda Baba as he originally appeared. In fact, if you go back and watch the sequence at the cantina, you can see him standing there up against the bar. He still has the flipper hands. Yeah, and there is a behind the scenes photo after the arm is cut off with him actually holding the DL21. But like I said before, it was Dr. Evazan who drew down on Luke and Ben. And there you go. They cut off the arm. I should have put an extra picture in there because they actually cut off Ponda Baba's left arm. but that is very much a right hand.
Yeah.
The hairy Wolfman hand. That's a thumb there. That's a right hand.
That's no flipper claw.
No.
And oddly enough, that photo of Ponda Baba, it kind of looks like early version of Zoidberg.
Doesn't it though, eh?
A young Dr. Zoidberg.
Yeah. I've included a shot here of the alien blaster because I think it's, you want to see them side by side to kind of go, oh yeah, that's what they did.
Well, he went the opposite direction. Instead of adding scopes, he added some undercarriage to it.
Yeah. So let's take a look here. I got some other stuff I want to show you too. Let's go forward here. So there's a version of that, the SE. This one is, what is this? The SE14R, which is very much a variant of the SE14C. Now, this gun, I've included it here because it's kind of a neat little, it's a bit of an outlier. Never made it into the movie, but it was used extensively in the promotional photography for Star Wars back in '77. That image of the Stormtrooper holding that gun is hugely famous.
Yeah.
That gun never made it into the movie. But it is, what's funny is like, it's literally the 14R, but just different scopes,
Single scope.
Yeah. I've included, this is kind of cool. I know I said we weren't going to talk about a bunch of the other movies, but I could not include this. Lando Calrissian carried a version of this, which you get to see even at the Battle of in Kessel. And just like, typical Lando, it's chromium plated with mother of pearl handles.
Flashy.
Tala in the Obi-Wan series, when she got off the transport and she shot those stormtroopers.
Is that the one she was using?
That's what she was carrying.
Nice.
Yeah, so finally got its, although I think it's been shown in The Mandalorian and some other things too, but yeah, back in '77, this never made it into the movie, but like I said, it was used in the promo photography.
So it did get constructed.
Yeah. So, wow, we're still in the cantina, right?
So far, yes.
Okay, so sticking with that for a second, let's go over to here because this is another, well, we all know how this goes.
Han shot first.
Han did shoot first. Okay, we all agree on that one. Greedo's gun, the Blasttech DT12. This was a heavy blaster pistol, and it was favored by non-human humanoids because of the wide trigger guard and the bulky handle, which made it easy to be grasped by various appendages, not necessarily hands and fingers.
So Blasttech was very accommodating.
Well, I mean, in the galaxy far, far away, you're not
have to be.
Yeah, you're not just making blaster weapons for,
evolved monkeys.
4 fingers and a thumb. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're doing it for, 4 really long fingers with suction cups.
Or flipper hands.
And flipper hands, exactly. All right. So, the DT12, this one is actually based on an American 22 caliber, the Ruger Mark 1. The Ruger Mark 1 was released in 1949, marketed as a casual sport target shooting pistol. Now, for Star Wars, this is there's not a lot of information on this one because there's just not a lot of good photos. The barrel was shortened, obviously, and it was fitted with several embellishments. And I say embellishments because nobody really knows for certain 100% exactly what everything was.
It almost looks like a more traditional ray gun.
I went to the RPF, the replica prop forum, which I expected wouldn't have all the answers, and 15 pages of discussion on this blaster. And one of the post comments that I saw from one of the makers there was, I've come to the conclusion that I can basically put whatever I want on it, and fans will still go, nice. Just nobody knows 100% exactly what all that stuff is. Yeah. All right. Fun fact here about the DT12. Now, this is another one. This is coming out to you guys, to the audience. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the DT12 may in fact have died with Greedo because I don't think it's had another on-screen appearance since then. If you guys know better, let me know in the comments. All right. And that brings us probably to what I would say is probably
one of the most iconic ones of the film.
Yeah, like maybe the most famous Star Wars gun ever.
Maybe.
And that, of course, is the one carried famously by Han Solo. And that is the DL44 Heavy blaster pistol. Again, from our good friends over at Blasttech. This might be one of the most controversial weapons in Star Wars history because not only does Han Solo's blaster vary from each film, it actually varies from shot to shot within the same movie.
Oops.
There are a couple different versions of this weapon that were made, and there are some subtle differences or very big differences if you know what you're looking for. But for the purposes of our show tonight, we are talking specifically about the DL44 hero prop from A New Hope, because if we get to do another show on this, we're going to talk about the other one because it comes up a few times.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the DL44 Heavy blaster pistol was considered to be one of the most powerful blasters in existence. And that punch did not sacrifice any accuracy, which made it popular amongst both government agencies and private individuals, smugglers and other unsavories, etc., etc. This blaster is basically the Honda Civic of blasters. It is considered to be widely, highly modifiable. And as we saw in Solo, in a Star Wars story, that it could be kitted out with a longer barrel and a buttstock, converting it into a carbine. If you remember, that's how, Han got it from Tobias Beckett, who broke it down from its carbine and tossed him the pistol. Hey, you're going to need this. So there you go. Yeah. The DL44, of course, is based on, probably one of the most famous pistols ever, the German Mauser C96 pistol. That was produced from 1896 to 1937.
It's a good run.
Yeah. Within its first year, the Mauser was sold to several governments and commercially to private citizens. It has been copied many, many times, and there are at least 10 notable versions. Again, I'm not a gun guy, so I'm not going to go through all that. But just to say, it's a hugely popular gun. For Star Wars, the Mauser may or may not have included an actual heavy barrel. They're not sure. It might have been a heavy barrel, or it may have been a barrel shroud, but it did have a heavier barrel. It was also fitted with the flash suppressor from a German MG81 machine gun and a side-mounted scope. So the DL44 blaster, the carbine version, also takes its design cues from the C96, which also had a carbine version.
Highly functional.
Yeah. So this is kind of neat because it ties into the real world history. Like, not only was the C96, the Mauser pistol, knocked off, so was the DL44. The Merson company actually made at least 2 knockoff versions of the DL44. They are the Power 5 and the Model 57.
No real naming convention.
No, not really.
Fluidity or
nothing there, is there?
No, just pitching names, really.
Yeah, I mean, if we get to do another one of these, do you remember Luke's pistol on Empire Strikes Back?
Vaguely.
Kind of looks like Han's pistol.
A little bit.
It's a Merson. Yeah. All right, so
they really need to do an episode of something where Boba Fett, Din Djarin, and somebody goes to the Star Wars equivalent of like
a gun shop or something,
or like Bass Pro Shop. Bass Pro Shop in space.
Seriously.
Yeah. And you see just aisles and aisles of Blasttech stuff and Merson stuff.
Well, so that's kind of, I mean, if you're paying attention, look, season 1, The Mandalorian season 1, his weapons, the weapon locker on the Razor Crest has got a bunch of the guns in it.
Nice.
Including some of the ones that we've talked about. So it's definitely worth going back and looking at.
But you figure like Star Wars did Below Deck to do a bit of a comedy twist to it. Kevin Smith, looking at you. How about it?
Yeah.
Bass Pro Shop in space. Make it like Clerks.
That'd be hilarious.
Clerks in space.
I'm down for that.
It could be good.
All right. Well, no scruffy nerf herder would be the same without their faithful Wookiee companion, which brings us to, this is the end of our list, by the way. And I don't think there was anything else after that, because really everything after the blasting out of the Mos Eisley is just a reuse of everything we've already seen up until that point.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to Chewbacca's bowcaster. We've talked about the bowcaster before, but you know what? We're going to go through it again.
Might as well.
So Chewie's bowcaster is a traditional handcrafted Wookiee weapon. Like other bowcasters, it uses electromagnetic induction to fire a metal coral that is sheathed in plasma just like a regular blaster bolt, but that makes it really, really destructive, which we saw several times.
Mm-hmm. And they really dial in on it in The Force Awakens.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, hey, can I see that?
You've been holding out on me.
So Chewbacca's bowcaster breaks from the Wookiee tradition in the sense that it actually has an automatic cocking system as opposed to having to one at a time.
Well,
it also uses the power pack from an Imperial E11 blaster rifle. And this one, like I said, it's equipped with dual scopes. Now, Chewbacca bowcaster, I've included an image here. This is the Horton Safari Magnum crossbow. That is not the bow that Chewie's bowcaster is based on. However, it is about the closest thing that I could find, and it is a lot of prop makers, a lot of like cosplay prop guys. They will use the Horton Safari Magnum as a base,
a stand-in.
Yeah, as a base to construct their own bowcaster. So Bernard Horton, the guy who actually made it, said in an interview that it's oh, we got a comment coming in here.
Oh, it's Sean from Peterborough.
Sean from Peterborough. What Sean is saying, hey, I just tuned in. Have you chatted about the communicators in episode 1? They were lady shavers.
We did bring those up.
We've brought that up before, not today.
But in our prop culture episode.
We absolutely did. We are not talking about just the general tech of Star Wars tonight, Sean. We are specifically talking about the blasters and blaster weapons, specifically from A New Hope. And as I said before, we're just getting to the end of our list here. We're talking about Chewbacca's bowcaster, which is based on a military crossbow that was designed by Bernard Horton. This one was aimed at the European defense market. He says that there wasn't a whole lot of interest. It was made of aluminum, and very few models would have been sold in the US. So again, it closely resembles another Horton design, the Safari Magnum, which is made of composite materials. Now, that being said, fun fact, Chewbacca has crafted at least one other bowcaster, which if you go back and watch Revenge of the Sith, you can see him carrying, and it's got the reverse throwing arms where the balls are reversed in front of the barrel and not behind. Yeah, it's much different. It's got more like gold tones to it. So yeah, that's
I figure he's like what, 200 years old. He's had to have built a few of them.
Yeah, exactly. At least 2 anyway.
Yeah.
Well, man, that covers all the weapons that we set out to talk about here. At least the ones from A New Hope. Where did I put that slide? There we go. Just look at them all again together. How many did we cover here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, I guess, if you include I didn't put the Tuscan rifle in there, but yeah.
Well, you figure like that's good on the prop guys for not just, giving out one standard gun.
Yeah.
Here's your one phaser rifle. Go to it.
I encourage you guys, go out there, go back and watch A New Hope, and go to the cantina scene and really dial in on that and have a look, because you'll see flipper hands, and if you can get the brightness on your TV up enough, you should be able to see the DL21 in Ponda Baba's holster. Oh, by the way, I never did talk about that. The DL21, that flared barrel, that's actually the back end of a mortar.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Did I have it in here? Where did I put it?
Maybe.
There it is. Yeah, it is a mortar. Also, Dengar, Bounty Hunter Dengar, is wearing a DL21 as a sidearm in The Empire Strikes Back.
Nice.
So, speaking of The Empire Strikes Back, if you guys like this, do let us know, because again, this was just kind of a nice casual sit down chitty chat about a bunch of stuff that maybe you didn't know a lot about. But there are so many more weapons in Star Wars. I think we've got almost as many in Empire as we do in A New Hope, which I am more than willing to come back and talk about those in a future episode.
It's kind of weird, like how many of them have a real world component.
They really do. I mean, almost all of them. I can't actually say that for a fact. Part of me is interested in going and looking at sort of the prequel trilogy, because I know that there's a lot more. The prequel trilogy with its more sleek look, really emulates. And I was thinking about this as I was putting the episode together. Think back to like Coruscant in like the Phantom Menace and Naboo.
Mm-hmm.
Really gives me the Flash Gordon vibes.
Yeah.
Just so futuristic. Even Padme's little silver blaster.
Yep.
I'm like, that's so spacey.
Well, even the ships were chromed out too,
Yeah,
right?
there's just no other way to say it. Like, really get the Flash Gordon rocket ship vibe out of that.
A little bit.
Which
But there's also
kinda-
Batman vibes too.
There is that too. I certainly appreciate it a little bit more now, having had this little look at sort of the guns of Star Wars, and more than happy to come back and do it again. So if you like this one, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Do consider checking out our Patreon and supporting the show that way, because man, every little bit helps. Even if you don't want to become a patron, we do encourage you, share this video with your like-minded friends. Please subscribe to the channel, like our videos, because even a simple thumbs up tells the algorithm that you like what we are doing and will suggest our videos in other content searches. So that's it for me, man. You got anything else?
Not that I know of. I went to the Peterborough Comic Con today.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
It was okay.
How many vendors?
I did not count, but it was a full house.
Okay, that's good to know.
And I came away with some treasures, so it was a good day.
Well, anyway, if Hank were here, he would tell you, my mantra, kids, go and read the comics, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the comics that will help connect the dots.
Yes, there is.
But hey, we'll be back to connect some more dots sometime next week. Don't know what we're going to talk about. Could be more Star Wars weapons, might be something else, but
if you got a suggestion, let us know.
Do let us know. Until then, guys, thank you for joining us as always. And until the next video, my friends, my name is Wes.
I'm Andy.
We'll see you on the next one. And bye for now.